Just another brutal loss for the Philadelphia 76ers. It is bad, people. They fall to the Celtics 123-105. Let's break it down right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On 76ers. We're your host, Keith Pompey, 76ers beat writer. I'm Kayla Santiago, sideline reporter for the Delaware Blue Coats, the NBA G League affiliate of the Philadelphia 76ers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if you hit your first $5 bet, if that bet is able to win. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, subscribe wherever you're listening to our podcast. You can also check us out at the free daily newsletter. That's on LockedOnDaily.com. So we'll touch on the game. We'll touch on everything in between, the state of the 76ers throughout this episode. A huge loss here, 123-105 to the Celtics. I mean, Keith, we knew what we were getting into in this game in the sense of the Celtics are sitting a lot of guys. Yeah, Jason Tatum is playing the 76ers. No Paul George, no Tyrese Maxey in this game. The Celtics bench was having fun out there against the Philadelphia 76ers and players we haven't even heard before. I mean, this kind of shows you and implements just how bad this season was. Gershon couldn't even get it going. Kelly Oubre seemed like maybe the only guy to have heart out there, but another bad loss for the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's tough to take away too many or any positive things besides Kelly Oubre from this game because the 76ers, they show they're a bad team and are trying to be, you know, in the up and atom of the tanking series with the Raptors and so on and so forth here.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, when you look at this thing and you see this team, it's not about Yabu and this and that. I mean, it is what it is. Like, these guys they're just not a good team. I mean, when we look at it, you got Kelly Oubre, you got Yabu, you got all these other guys, but the 76ers just aren't a good team. I mean, right now they're 21-41. I mean, they dropped 20 games below 500 for the first time since since they went 28-48 and on March 31st, 2017, right? It's the funny part about that team. That team finished 28-54. That was the 2016-17 76ers, right? When they threw 62 games, again, the Sixers are 21-41. That team was 23-39, right? So it's a lot going on. I mean, we can sit back and we can talk about it, but the thing is that you really got to understand is it ain't a matter of it's kind of like the Celtics were like, you know what? We're going to put two guys on there who never played, and we're going to start them because you guys are resting your players, and we're still going to be able to beat you. And what they did is they played in a back-to-back. Jason Tatum didn't play on Wednesday night, so he had to play tonight because they said you didn't play, so you're going to play as a national televised game. And they just looked and they beat them. I mean, the one thing about the 76ers is I remember Luke Cornett a couple years ago, even at a point last year, where he just couldn't do anything against the 76ers. He just couldn't. And now the last two games, he was the best big out there. You know what I mean? And that even includes when Joel Embiid played the last time. Right. So when we look at this team, it's just like there's a lot going on. And like, I don't like nothing against Kelly Oubre, nothing against Gershon Yabusele. Is like, Gershon played great against him the last time. Kelly Oubre did things like that. But basically, if you really want to look at it, what it showed us that the Jason Tatum, Derek White, and the Boston Celtics bench is better than Kelly Oubre and the Sixers bench. And no matter how we try to like squeeze it and say everything nice about the Sixers bench, like if they win a game, they got one of the worst benches in the league right now. I mean, they just do because of injuries and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's nothing to get out of it. But the state of the 76ers is that, this is a bad team right now. They're talking about the playoffs. They're talking about all this other stuff. And it's just a bad squad.
I don't even want to hear playoffs anymore because when I look at it right now, and I'm going to look at some of these games that have happened in the Eastern Conference and what we're looking at, not going too far away from this game, but when you look at it, the Raptors just were able to defeat the Magic in their last game, 114 to 113. They take on the Jazz next. Those are some pivotal games going forward. The 76ers are one game above Toronto in the Eastern Conference, so they could drop to the 13th seed. There's no reason this team should be competing for a play-in spot. They shouldn't be competing for a playoff spot. They are a terrible team to watch right now. And when you're nationally televised, and actually, I forgot that they were nationally televised until yesterday, saying, oh my goodness, this game is actually on display so they can embarrass themselves and on national television. I mean, there's just not a lot to say from what you can look at this matchup. Jason Tatum, he did what he needed to do. He had 35 points and let everybody else cook around him, who maybe we haven't heard of before. And for the 76ers, it was a little bit of Kelly Oubre and a whole lot of nobody else. So at this point right now, the state of the 76ers, to me, is when you look at that record when they had 28 wins, I didn't even predict them winning 7 more games this season. So I don't even know if they get to that mark on the year. You probably should look at the state of sitting your guys that are injured. And at this point, Keith, to me, and my takeaway from this game is that they could get in that 13th spot because the Raptors are deciding to win against the Magic and some other teams. They have the Jazz up next. I mean, there's no playoffs shouldn't even be spoken in the air for this organization. I know they want to act like, oh, we're not going to, down this season. And I know it's realistic because of the picture, but to me, at this point, just tank. There's nothing you can get out of this team. I don't
even know if that's going to work because, see, that's the easy thing to say, and not to disagree with you. I mean, but it's like that's the easy thing to say. I mean, tank for what? I mean, to be honest with you,
right. They don't
so
get
what are you taking for? And right about now, you got people up here like you look at Daryl Morey when they did the live look in them at the game, they're looking at it as if, man, this is bad. We need to do something to keep our jobs. And as crazy as it is, they're what? They're still in 11th place because Brooklyn lost, right? So it's kind of like, I get what everybody's saying, but the future just doesn't look bright. Like right now, you got to look at it. They have, if we're going to be real, so who would you say is the most impressive guy that they picked up recently?
Maybe Quentin Grimes as of late, but, last night didn't see too much from him. So probably him, but also he's not a huge future piece either. So Quentin Grimes has showed up.
Okay, so it's Quentin Grimes, right?
Yeah, Quentin Grimes would be my pick.
So here's the thing with the whole Quentin Grimes thing. So Quentin Grimes is a restricted free agent.
Yep.
Right? So all that stuff sounds good on paper, like, yeah, we can match things. Well, right now the 76ers are cash strapped. Like they got 3 guys on max salaries. So what if a team just threw a team really wanted Quentin and said, we're going to give you 15 million, 16 million. Well, then the Sixers are going to have to think long and hard about, okay, we got Justin Edwards that we want to rework his deal. We got Yabusele. We got these other people. Do we really want to go after them? So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it all sounds good. It all does, right? But deep down inside, they don't have a future really because they got these 3 dudes. And 2 of them right now it's hard to trade, talking about Paul George and talking about Joel Embiid. So it's easy to say, let's tank. But even if you tank, you may not get the pick. So the future is not bright at all. Like it isn't. It's not bright at all.
They're in the worst spot you could possibly be, I think. And when you look at it, because the 76ers are in a spot where they could possibly make a play-in, which I don't see them doing. but you get knocked out probably in that first game, especially if everybody's still injured and not 100% healthy. You know you're not getting Joel Embiid back at this point as well this season. But you're also at a point where if we look at the Eastern Conference, and we can talk about this a little bit more in the next segment as well, the Wizards only have 12 wins. The Hornets have 14 wins. The Raptors, they did just win, but, you know, it looks like they were also trying to tank at a point too. The Jazz at 15 wins and the Pelicans with 17. So no matter what you do, the Sixers are just in a really bad spot. Once again, they fall to the Celtics 123-105. We'll keep breaking down the state of the Sixers throughout this podcast right here on Locked On 76ers when we come back after the break. And with that, we have to tell you about BetterHelp. Who's in your support system? As this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Who is in your support system? We all need people to lean on, whether it's friends, family, mentors, or professionals. Even the strongest leaders and athletes know that asking for help makes them better. Therapy is one of the best ways to build a strong support system. It's not just for tough times. It helps with setting boundaries, developing coping skills, and becoming the best version of yourself. Learning to ask for help, I've seen firsthand how valuable it is to have a support system that keeps you grounded and motivated, especially no matter what point you're at in your life, whether you're trying to find your first job, whether you're in a job, how to move away from home, whether you're in college. At any point, you always need that support and those people around you as well. Everyday benefits. Therapy isn't just about crisis moments. It's a tool for self-involvement and self-improvement, stress management, and navigating life's challenges. Convenient and accessible. BetterHelp is fully online, making it easier than ever to connect with licensed therapists from anywhere with over 30,000 professionals available. You can find the right fit and switch anytime at no extra cost. And that can be huge, being able to have it online as well. If you're busy, if you can't get out to meet with somebody in person, you can do it from the comfort of your home. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. So make sure you go check them out today. Keith, I want to ask you this, and this is something that has surfaced a little bit, and I gave my opinion on our last episode, but the one team that's also had a really disappointing season this year and just a crazy season at that is the Dallas Mavericks. And they're a team that clearly had the big blockbuster trade that everybody didn't know what they were doing. Guys got injured. Of course, Kyrie now done for the year. Which is worse? Because I lean more towards the side of the Mavericks. Being worse in the sense of expectations. Oh, Keith says 76ers. What's your reasoning here? Let us hear it.
I mean, the Mavericks, like they got okay, so who's the star of the Sixers? Next year.
Injured. Oh,
no,
next year?
Who's the star? Yeah, who's the star of the Sixers next year?
If Joel's healthy, or Tyrese Maxey, but yeah, the star next year is better for the Mavs for sure.
Yeah, and that's why they're a better team. I mean, you know, I honestly think that they are. I think that, you know, I mean, they'll have Caleb Martin coming back next year. I think he'll be healthy. They'll have what's the center? What's my man's name? Who went to Westtown?
Derek Lively.
You got Anthony Davis, you got Derek now. Okay, you don't have Kyrie. I get it. I get that. But hell, they're going to get that first round pick. So you look at the 76ers.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we don't know what Paul George is going to be like next year. Heck, we don't even know if Paul George is going to want to be here next year. Probably. We don't know anything about Joel Embiid. You know what I mean? The team is saying he doesn't need surgery. He's saying he needs something. He wants to look for something, right? There's no communication. So when we look at it, you have to say that the Sixers are in a worse spot than them. Now, again, I get it. Kyrie's going to be out for a year, the whole nine. But, you know, you look at their starting lineup outside of Kyrie compared to the Sixers. I mean, don't get me wrong. If Embiid comes back at 80%, if Paul George could get healthy, and then Maxey, then you have to say that. But I don't think they're all going to come back at healthy or close to 80 or whatever percent they need to. So I think the 76ers, I mean, I get it. The narrative is like outside looking in. You're making fun of them because they traded Luka. You know, they did a lot of crazy things. But he didn't max out 3 players. He just didn't. I mean, think about this. Right now, if you look at the 76ers roster today, the people who started, they had Andre Drummond starting, who was turned out, I like him, but he's a journeyman former All-Star.
Yeah.
You had an undrafted small forward in Justin Edwards, right? Who was a two-way guy. You had Gershon Yabusele, who was in the league. I mean, he's a great pickup, but he was a pickup because he dunked on LeBron James. You had Kelly Oubre, a guy who kind of like turned his stuff around. But a year ago, the 76ers were the only team who wanted him, right? You had Quentin Grimes, who played on his 4th team in 1 calendar year. Lonnie Walker, who was the 6th man, who basically came from Lithuania. They got him on vacation. Jared Butler was a 2-way guy who basically struggled, but he had a big game against the Sixers, and they gave up a 1st-round pick for him. And Jeff Dalton was another 2-way guy. Those were the top 8 guys. So when you look at that, I have to say that the 76ers are in the worse spot than the Dallas Mavericks.
When I look at the Mavericks, there's definitely more shock value in the terms of you get rid of a guy that could be a franchise. You bring in a guy that has been known to have injuries at that position in Davis. But yeah, you're right. They also have Garland too. They have Derek Lively, who really, it's crazy. I was actually able to talk to his high school coach, Seth Berger, and he says he is going to be a great NBA player. He's one of the best skilled players I ever had at the high school level. Then, of course, he goes to Duke. He develops, and now he's in the NBA. In addition, then Kyrie Irving too. And the other thing, it's great that you bring up Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey, because what you mentioned there was we don't even know if they're going to be healthy. We don't know if Paul George is going to play. The other thing, Keith, we haven't even seen them play well together. And I know they haven't been all healthy this year, and I do understand that, and that could definitely turn some things around. But those 3 have got no chemistry together. Granted, they didn't play a lot of games together, but at the same time, Paul George, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Maxey, anytime they were on the floor, all 3 of them, it was somebody was off, and it usually was Paul George at that time. So not only do you have a team that is going to be looking at injuries next year, who wants to play, who wants to be on it, but you don't even know how they play together fully. They haven't played together. They haven't shown you that in addition. I still think the shock value to me goes to the Dallas Mavericks in terms of what they lost and what happened this year. But the 76ers, I think a lot of people tend to forget too at the same time, because it seems so long gone at this point, that they were supposed to be a team that got out of the 2nd round, that went to an Eastern Conference final, that had a big 3 coming in. And then you go to this point of the year where they're as bad as they've been since the 2016-2017 season. So I see where you side with Sixers definitely there, because the future of this team, there's a big question mark around it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you look at it as much as, it's nice to make fun of Dallas and this and that, but this Sixers team, in the summer, I wasn't saying it, but people were saying they won the summer. They were saying that this was the team to beat. They were saying a lot of stuff, and now you look at it and they're 21-41, right? I mean, come on. Like, yeah, they're horrible. I mean, like they're what, 20 games below 500, so this is awful right about now. So yeah, this is bad. This is bad.
That it is. The 76ers, it's been a rough year. It's crazy to think that there was a point being title contenders so far long gone, and just shows you what this season has been, a dumpster fire at that. I said that earlier on in the year. I used that term. I'm bringing it back for what we're seeing right now with the Philadelphia 76ers. So we'll continue to break everything down in just a moment on the other side. So make sure you stay with us. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make sure you make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Go check it out today. If you want to place all your bets, whatever sport it may be, MLB coming up, of course, spring training in full swing, in addition to NBA as the playoffs are coming closer and closer. Anything that you want to bet on, you can with FanDuel. All right. So, Keith, I did a little bit of this yesterday. And when I was looking at the 76ers overall schedule, looking for the state of the Sixers, 20 games below 500 now, I had them winning 6 games around that mark. We alluded to before 28 wins, or that record that there was under 500, that 28 wins at that point of the season in 2016-17. Do they even get to that this year? Do you see where there's a world where they're able to do so? Now, anything can happen, clearly, and we don't know if Tyrese, Maxey, and Paul George are going to come back, but I really don't think so. I think there's going to be some of these games where even if they play the bad teams coming up, and we're talking about the teams that so-and-so won a tank with Philadelphia, utilizing that term a lot in this episode, but you're looking at the Jazz, a team that really has nothing to lose at this point because they're still probably going to be in the top 6 worst teams. The Hawks probably going to be a loss. The Raptors just beat the Magic. Where do you see this kind of shaping out for Philadelphia? Because we could be talking about historic lows for this team in the 24-25 season.
I think I said earlier that I think they're only going to win 5 more games, and I think that's the max for them. I mean, I could be wrong, but you look at it. They could possibly, but again, it depends on who plays. Tyrese Maxey, here's the problem. When you have a back injury like that, you can either miss a couple of games or you can miss a couple of weeks, right? So he's already missed 2 games. So we'll see. But outside of that, I just don't see it. Like, I don't see them. Maybe they may beat the Jazz. They could possibly beat Toronto, but I don't see it. I mean, Toronto already beat them, twice. Maybe the Spurs, Washington, and then Washington again. Like, I just don't see it. I mean, you never know what can happen in that last game of the season against the Bulls, because both teams, the Bulls might be like 1-2-3 Cancun, and they may just try to lay down. But aside from that, I only see them winning 5 games for the remainder.
Yeah, and right now the Sixers are 3.5 games out of that 10th spot too. So that's the other interesting thing too, right? Because when you look at it, we're going to keep track of really the Bulls schedule and the Nets schedule as well, because when you look at those schedules going forward, that last game could possibly be for that 10th spot. Who wants to end up getting there? Or the 76ers could just continue to lose these games, come out, and that game might not matter and the Bulls might want to win. It just really depends on what happens here and what teams kind of want to get in that top 6 and chance of getting into that lottery, because that's a real thing that we can look at even for the Bulls and the Nets at this point of the season. Now, they have to probably lose every single game going forward, but at the same time, those teams aren't out of that conversation either. So it's not just the Sixers that are trying to do this tanking thing and trying to get into that top 6.
But I don't think the Sixers are tanking. I think you're saying, they keep saying the other 2 teams are tanking. Yeah. I don't think the Sixers are necessarily, I think people think they're tanking. I don't think the Sixers are necessarily tanking, because if they tank, it could have disastrous ramifications for them. Like, I'm talking about Daryl Morey could be fired. Yeah. Nick Nurse could be gone, right? So when you look at that, I don't think they're necessarily tanking as of yet, because they're not going to get their picks. The Brooklyn Nets are going to get their pick. The Chicago Bulls made a trade that's going to enable them to get their pick. Those 2 teams are tanking. I don't think the Sixers are necessarily doing it. I just think they got a bad product. Now, I think maybe you can say some of the players checked out, right? And they're like ready to go to Cancun, but I don't think they're tanking per se, like everybody's saying. You know what I mean? I think that's the narrative that's going on, but I don't think they're tanking. I just think they're a bad team.
I wouldn't fully split. Now, I have been saying tanking a lot, so I'll back my claim in the sense of I think that this team sees where they're at right now, but I guess that term really can't be used unless you're saying, okay, well, Tyrese, Maxey, and Paul George are done for the season. And I don't know if that's going to happen.
You can still play with them and tank. I think they're trying. You can play. They can go through the motions. I mean, they can do whatever.
Can. I don't think they should. I think they should be shut down at this point. But
yeah, I mean, but again, like you got to realize this has ramifications right now. Like this is a bad. Like you don't. You know, the ownership is like to a point where you gave this guy money. Yeah. To get, you gave him leeway to give out money to 3 max players, right? You also, in addition to that, you basically enabled him to give up this year's draft pick when he traded Al Horford. So with all that being said, like there's a lot on the line, you think, for Daryl Morey, right? So, like, if they're tanking, I can see them, all right, we're just going to try to lose. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Yada, yada. Everything's cool. But right about now, it's like, dude, you left them in a worse place than when you came here. I mean, when he got here, like, they were upset because Brett Brown lost in the first round. But the year before that, before he lost in the first round, that was the 4 bounce shot by Kawhi.
Yeah.
And they had the best team that they had. That was it. That was the highlight. So now you bring in Daryl Morey, who's supposed to be the guru to get them to the next level. Then they said Doc Rivers was the problem. So what happens? Doc Rivers had, in over a 3-year span, they had the second most wins in the NBA in the regular season. They lost to the Hawks, right? And then they lost some other 2 games. They lost 2 game 7s. And what happens? He gets canned, and the team is worse. I mean, they go from being a play-in team to losing to the New York Knicks, right? They were playing, losing to your New York Knicks, and now they probably won't even make the play-in. So, like, I'm telling you, he ain't trying to tank, because if you tank knowing that you're going to get a draft pick. If they wanted to tank, they should have tanked sooner. They should have started tanking in December when they realized that it was going to go south, and had a chance of going south. Because right now, they may not catch those teams ahead of them or below them in the tanking standing.
In the tanking standings. I love it. And you also know those teams are going to be watching the Sixers like hawks and saying, all right, I'm not going to allow them to even get close to us too. So there's a real situation here. Either way, Daryl Morey possibly on the hot seat. Maybe we can save that for tomorrow as well and dive into that a little bit more. But the reality of the situation is this team is really bad, tanking or not. Who's going to play? Who's going to be able to come back and play? There's a lot of question marks, not only just with the team and the injuries and the coaching, because before it was Brett Brown's problem, then it was Doc Rivers, and everybody said Nick Nurse is going to come in and get this team where it needs to be. And now Nick Nurse he does have his issues, yes, but in addition, he's also a problem. So the cycle is just continuing, getting worse. It's worse than we've seen in a lot of time, almost 10 years, people. We're looking at 8 or 9 years that it's been this bad for the 76ers on a team in the beginning of the year that had Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey, by the way. We can't forget about that. I know it feels like a long time ago, but that's the state and the reality of the Philadelphia 76ers right now. So they have a little bit of time off here. Their next game coming in on Sunday. That's going to be a tough one for Philadelphia as well. They've all been tough at this point. They lose to the Celtics 123-105. They will play on Sunday, March 9th at 7:30 p.m. against the Jazz. That will be at home at the Wells Fargo Center. Let us know in the comments what you think about the current state of the Philadelphia 76ers, what you want to see them do and let us know how you think, whether you're watching us on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts in addition. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers with Keith Pompey. I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you guys next time.